Shalom, 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 shalom. As always, I want to give Kal Halal, Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahushai, Bahasham, Barakah, Kodash. Yahweh is the Most High's name, which just means He is or He is to be. Bahasham is in the name, Yahweh Shai, the Son's name, which means He's the deliverer. Bahasham in the name, Rakah, Kodash, which means the Holy Spirit. So as we always do, we open these edifications by giving praises to the Most High and His Son, Yahweh Shai, who the world ignorantly calls Jesus Christ. As we always like to remind you, our Lord, Yahweh Shai, is a Hebrew Israelite from the tribe of Judah. So He has a Hebrew name. Always remember that. His name is not Jesus Christ. His name is Yahweh Shai, which means He's the deliverer. All right? As always, double honors to the apostles of Great Millstone, our teachers that taught us this word through the powers of the Holy Spirit. And shalom to my fellow Hebrew Israelite brothers out there that are teaching the prophecies of the Bible, the scriptures, in the name of our Savior, Yahweh Shai. As always. And shalom, peace be unto you, brothers and sisters that have been edified by this truth. Those of you that have been edified by the truth of the scriptures, of who we are. We are the true children of Israel. We are the Israelites, and who the other nations are. And the end time prophecies of the Bible that we profess and we teach week in and week out. So as you can see from today's edification, it's called The Jig is Up, Amalek, the Israeli converts. The jig is up, Amalek, the Israeli converts. So those of you who don't know who Amalek is the grandson of Esau, the Edomites. As we always tell you, these titles and these that they've given the nations today are not what they were known in the biblical times. We are not black. We are not Jamaican, West Indian, or Caribbean. We are not African American. We are not Native American Indian. We are not the Latinos, Mexicans, Puerto Ricans. We are the Israelites. The so-called white man is not your Europeans. They are Edomites. They descend from Esau. Amalek is Esau's grandson. So the so-called Jews that call themselves Israelis, they descend, their line comes from Amalek, Esau's grandson. So they're all Edomites, those so-called Europeans, the so-called white man. They are all Edomites, but the head tribe, which are the so-called Jews, the people that call themselves Jewish and Israeli, they go back to Amalek, Esau's grandson, but they're all Edomites. So those people in Israel today that live in Borough Park in New York, that live in Stamfordville and Golders Green and Hendon in London, those so-called Jews and that occupy the land of Israel today and call themselves Israelis, they are all Edomites. But they go back to Esau's grandson, Amalek, just so you understand. But they are all Edomites. So today they call themselves Jewish, Israelis. Some of them call themselves, Europeans, so-called white people, but they are not. Now we're going to go into a little bit of history here, and then we're going to bring out some scriptures, right? Because we have to always show you how we know these things, who these people are and who we are. How do we know that we are the true children of Israel? And how do we know that they are not the Israelites? That's why they call themselves Israelis. They don't ever use the title Israelite because they know they are not the Israelites. So John Hyrcanus is the grandson, if I get this right, is he the grandson of Matthias? Yeah, he's Matthias's grandson. He's Matthias' grandson. He's the son of Simon Thaddeus. He's a Maccabean from, they call the Hasmonean family, right? They were a priestly family. They're from the tribe of Levi because they were priests. He comes from the Hasmonean family, right? These are the Maccabees. You heard about the Maccabees? His father is Simon Maccabeus, all right? Referred to as Simon Thaddeus, all right? But we're going to read a little bit of this, and then we're going to show you some other documents, and then we're going to pull out the scriptures. So, John Hyrcanus was a high priest, prince of the Hasmonean family. He's one of the Maccabeans. He's the grandchild of the Maccabeans. So his uncle was Judas Maccabean. The name Maccabee comes from John Hyrcanus's uncle, Judas. The word Maccabean means the hammer, because he was the most ferocious and the most best at military tactics out of the 5 brothers that fought the wars against the let's quickly just show you before we read this, just so you can see. Against the if we go into the Bible, we're going to go into the Bible, into the book of Maccabees, which is part of the Bible, part of the scriptures. I believe it's in chapter 3 or chapter 2. Hold on, I believe it goes in chapter 2. I just want to go to, so you can see the sons. Okay, all right. First Maccabees chapter 2. In those days arose Matthias. This is the grandfather of Jonathan Hyrcanus, the son of John, the son of Simeon, a priest of the sons of Jorab from Jerusalem, and dwelt in Modane. So, which means if he was a priest, they're the priests, they come from the tribe of Levi, right? From the southern kingdom. And he had 5 sons, Joanna, called Thaddeus, Simon, called Thassi. That's what I meant to say, Simon Thassi, not Thassius. Right? This is John Hyrcanus's father, Simon, who was called Thassius. Judas, who was called Maccabeus, right? Or the Maccabees. The name Maccabee was like a nickname, was a name given to Judas because the word Maccabeus in the Greek means the hammer. He was the best at the military tactics, and he was the most fiercest out of the brothers that led the war against Antiochus Epiphanes, the Greeks, during the time of the Hellenization of the Israelites. Eleazar, the other brother, called Avaran, and Jonathan, whose surname was Appius, right? And when he saw the blasphemies that were committed in Judah and Jerusalem, he said, "Woe is me, wherefore I was born to see this misery of my people and the holy city, and to dwell there when it was delivered into the hand of the enemy and the sanctuary into the hand of strangers." So this is where the wars that started with the Maccabees against the Greeks. Now, what's funny here, right, is that you see how all of these Israelite sons of Matthias all had a different name. So it says there, the 5 sons, Joanna was called Thaddeus, right? Simon, he was called Thassi. Judas was called Maccabeus. Eleazar was called Avaran. And Jonathan, whose surname was Appius. Now, let me tell you something about West Indian families, right? Especially Jamaican families. I don't know a single Jamaican or West Indian that's actually called by their first name, what they call their Christian name, their baptized name. I don't know a single Jamaican. And I'm Jamaican. When I say that, my parents are Jamaican. I'm an Israelite, but I'm just to give you more understanding. Not a single person in my family is called by their birth name. We all have another name. I don't know any other Jamaican. Uncles, aunts, cousins, friends, family that are called by their birth name. So if this doesn't show you that these are talking about us, Joanna was called Cadiz, Simon Thassi, Judas Maccabeus, Eleazar was called Avaran, and Jonathan was surnamed Appius. Not a single one of them was called by their so-called birth Christian names. And that's how our people are today. You go to the West Indies, I don't know anybody from the West Indies that's actually called by their Christian name. So that should tell you. So, look hard. So anyway, so let's go back to what I wanted to read out here. John Hyrcanus. So we've ascertained who John Hyrcanus is, right? He says, high priest, prince of the Hasmonean family, born about 175 BC, died around 104. He was a wise and just ruler and a skillful warrior. As a young man, he distinguished himself as a general in the war against the Syrian general, Candidus, whom he defeated. That John was given the surname Hyrcanus on account of his victory, is a tradition to which the Gratz and others attribute historical significance. When his father, Simon Maccabeus, who we just read, was assassinated at Jericho by his son-in-law, Ptolemy, who was a Greek, John succeeded in escaping from those that sent by Ptolemy to murder him also. All right? So you could read all of this at your own leisure, but I want to go down to the point I want to go to, right? And remember, we're reading from the Jewish Encyclopedia, the so-called Small Hats Encyclopedia, Amalek's Encyclopedia, right? This is his words. So this is where I want to go down to here. Forcibly converts the Edomites. The Edomites today are those same people in Israel that call themselves Jewish, right? The Edomites are also those Europeans that call themselves, so-called white people. Those are the Edomites today. But the head tribe out of Edom is Amalek today that we call, Jewish Israelis. So this is the forcibly converts to the Edomites. So this is those Israelis in Israel today. This was the first steps in converting them to what they call Judaism, right? Because as you know, you cannot convert to become an Israelite. But for Jonathan Hyrcanus to rule over them, he converted them, all right? But it doesn't make them the Israelites to be converted, because you can't be converted to become an Israelite. Just so you understand, you have to descend from one of the 12 tribes of the 12 sons of Israel. Right? Israel was Jacob. Jacob's name was changed to Israel. He had 12 sons, right? Which are the progenitors of the 12 tribes of Israel. Your lineage has to go back to the 12 tribes, the 12 sons. So simple as that. But what Jonathan Hyrcanus did, he converted them to control them, all right? And because they so much wanted to be part of our thing, just like today. This is why our identity was stolen by these people. It says here, Hyrcanus, who had been confirmed by the Romans in the possession of the important seaport of Joppa, subjugated other Syrian towns such as Beroa, which is what we know today as Aleppo. He marched against the fort of Medeba on the banks of the Jordan, which had always been hostile to the Hasmoneans, right? And he conquered it after 6 months' siege. He also conquered the town of Samega, on the Sea of Galilee, of special importance on account of its geographical position. He then proceeded against the Samaritans, right, which is the north, up in what we call the northern Israel, right, Samaria, who had always sided with the enemies of the Jews. Why was that? Because the people that was in Samaria were not Israelites. They were basically come from other nations, because Samaria was conquered by Shalmaneser V of Assyria, the Assyrian king, in 720 BC. And what Shalmaneser did, he brought his people from his lands, the Babylonians and the Assyrians, right, from Nineveh, he brought them into the land of Israel. And the Israelites that was in the northern kingdom, because at that time, Israel had 2 kings. You had the northern kingdom and you had the southern kingdom. The northern kingdom was conquered by Shalmaneser V, and I believe the king at the time was Hoshea, was the king of Israel. He took the Israelites out of the northern kingdom, brought them into Assyria, into captivity for 25 years. and then he transported his people in there. So by the time we get to 175 BC, the time of Jonathan Hyrcanus and the Maccabees, literally, probably 99% of the people that was in the northern kingdom of Israel and Samaria were not Israelites because of what took place under Shalmaneser the fifth. Now you can read about that in the book of Kings. I believe it's chapter 1. It's not chapter 1, I mean 1 Kings, chapter 17. I'm not going to go into that, but I believe it's, or is it 2 Kings? It's 2 Kings. I don't want to give you the wrong information, so you can read about that history yourself, right? So chapter 17 and chapter 10. Okay, you can read about that history yourself, about how the northern kingdom became inhabited by heathens, which were the other nations. Go to the book of 2 Kings, chapter 17, and it tells you what happened to the northern kingdom. So this is why when it says here, he then proceeded against the Samaritans, because the Samaritans, which was Samaria, it wasn't Israelites in there. That's why the Lord said to the disciples. This is why the Lord said this to the disciples, right? I'm going places that I had no plans on going to, right? 10 and 5. This is why the Lord said it to the disciples. This is the Lord speaking in red. These 12, Yahushai, because his name is not Jesus, sent forth and commanded them, saying, go not into the way of the Gentiles, which were the actual heathens, or into what? Any city of the Samaritans enter ye not, but go rather to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. Because the people that was in Samaria were not Israelites. There may be 1 or 2 Israelites living and mixed amongst them, but as a whole, the nation of people that lived in Samaria, the majority of them, probably 99% of them or 95% of them, were Gentiles, were heathens. They were Babylonians and Assyrians. That's why the Lord told them, go not into the way of to the Gentiles, or to any city of the Samaritans enter ye not. Because in Samaria, where the city of the Samaritans were, they were not Israelites, right? You would have had 1 or 2 Israelite families living amongst them, but as a whole, as I said before, probably 95 to 99% of the people that lived in Samaria were not Israelites. They were of other nations. That's why the Lord said, don't go there, but go rather to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. So back to Jonathan Hyrcanus. So he conquered Shechem, one of the most important towns of Samaria. So he had to go and conquer that. Why? Because it wasn't Israelites that was in Samaria. And destroyed the temple of Mount Gerizim. After victoriously ending the war in Samaria, he proceeded to subdue the Edomites, which today we know as the so-called white man, the so-called Jews, and the so-called white European nations. They are all Edomites. Those Jewish people are the same as those Europeans. Remember what I said to you, and I've said this many times to you before. Remember that they all come from Eastern Europe. So these were all Edomites that was living up in these places now. That's why they call themselves Ashkenazi, even though they don't go back to Ashkenaz. Ashkenaz is Gomer's son. He's the son of Magog. Sorry, Gomer is the son of Japhet. Sorry, that's what I meant to say, Salaki. Gomer is the son of Japhet, one of Noah's son, and Ashkenaz was Japhet's grandson. They're not Ashkenazis, they are Edomites. These people that live in Europe that call themselves Europeans, the so-called white man, and those that live in Israel that call themselves Israelis. They are all Edomites. So back to Jonathan. So after victoriously ending the war in Samaria, he proceeded to subdue the Edomites, right? The so-called white man. Always a menace to the southern parts of his domains. With funds which he had said to have obtained from David's sepulchre, he hired foreign troops. He dismantled Adora and Marissa, the strong place of Edom, that was the so-called white man's stronghold. And he forced the Edomites, this is where we want to get to, and he forced the Edomites, the so-called Jews today, those Israelis, to accept the Jewish religion and submit to circumcision. So he forced them, because now he was ruling over them. He conquered Edom. Remember, it says here, he hired foreign troops and they dismantled Adora and Marissa, the strongholds of Edom. So Jonathan Hyrcanus had subdued the Edomites now. They were under his rulership. But for that rulership to be sustained, he forced the Edomites to accept what they call the Jewish religion, the laws, commandments, and statutes, and to submit to circumcision. This is why they think they're the Jews, because a lot of them go back to this time of conversion. And he submitted them to circumcision, which was one of the laws, right? On the 8th day, you got to circumcise the boy child, right? It says, so now we're here. I'm going to read this. It says here, this is the first instance of forcible conversion in Jewish history. You understand? So when it says Jewish history, it means in the Israelite history, in our history. So in the history of our ancestors, this was the first instance of a forcible conversion of another nation to practice our laws, commandments, and statutes. So those small hats in Israel today were forced to convert to the laws, commandments, and statutes. This was the first instance that it took place around 170, 175 BC. It says, in this, Hyrcanus allowed his zeal for the Jewish cause to lead him to take a step which later wrought harm, because this brought harm to our people, this conversion. It should have never have happened. Jonathan Hyrcanus should have never have done it, because he knows that they can't become Israelites through conversion. But probably through his zealousness and him ruling them, subduing them, he thought he's going to make them follow our laws, commandments, and statutes. When really he should have left them. He should have forced them out of the southern of Judea, if any of them was in Judea, back to the land of Esau, Mount Seir, and let them continue worshipping their idol gods. But he conquered Edom, and he forced these Edomites to follow our laws, commandments, and statutes. This is why they think they are the real Jews of the Bible. So this conversion took place around 175 BC. It says, for to the Edomites belong to the family of the Herodians. So who are the Herodians? That's King Herod's family. Antipater was a general in the Roman army, an ambassador for the Romans. Herod the Great was Antipater's son. Herod the Great was the one that sent out the orders to kill all of the children under 2 when he heard about the prophecy of Yahushua being born, that this king is going to be born, is going to take down all rulership. He heard about the prophecies of the Bible about Yahushua. So that's who the Herodians are. That's Antipater, Herod the Great. Antipater is Herod the Great's father. Then you got Herod, the son of Herod the Great. You got Agrippa. I forget the other son's name, basically. But that's who the Herodians were. The Herodians married into the Israelites' line. It says here, it says, for to the Edomites belong the family of the Herodians. So, because Herod the Great married Israelites women as his wife, I think Miriam was his wife, their children looked, some of them would have come out looking just like Jake, just like a so-called black man. So when Herod sat on the throne, his son, these people would have looked like our people because they married. It says, who were to bring about the ruin of the Hasmoneans. They brought about the ruin of the Hasmonean family, the Herodians, who were Edomites. And in a funny sort of way, it's kind of probably like a punishment that the Most High did, because what Jonathan Hyrcanus did by forcefully converting these Edomites to accept the laws, commandments, and statutes. And it was never given to any other nation but the children of Israel. It says here, the Samaritans, who still held their strongly fortified metropolis of Samaria with a part of Jezreel, remained hostile towards the Jews. So why did the Samaritans remain hostile towards the Jews? Because those people in Samaria were not Israelites. They were heathens. They were actual Gentiles that came out of Assyria and the Babylonian Empire. It says, for this reason, Hyrcanus renewed his attacks upon them. He marched against Samaria at the head of a great army, but as his presence in Jerusalem was necessary, he left the siege of the city to his two sons, Aristobulus and Antigonus. All right. So this was the first forcefully conversion of these so-called white people, these so-called Jews, Israelis, to become Israelites. Now, this is the Jewish history, the Edomites, right? The ancient Jewish history, right? This is them again, right? This is one of their books, right? This is the Jewish virtual library. It says traditional enemies of the Israelites are the Edomites. There's no change today. They're our number one enemy, the Edomites, the so-called white men. Were the descendants of Esau, who often battled the Jewish nation. It should say Israelite nation, but they keep using the word Jewish because they think it's actually talking about them. No, they are the Edomites. We're not Jewish. We are the Jews. We are the Israelites. So anyway you see the word Jewish, it's actually talking about the Israelites, the true Israelites. It says Edom was in the southeast Palestine, stretched from the Red Sea at Elath to the Dead Sea. So Edom resided at the southern borders of Judea, all right, the kingdom of Judah, the southern kingdom, all right. So it says that it stretched from the Red Sea at Elath to the Dead Sea and encompassed some of Israel's most fertile land. The Edomites attacked Israel under Saul's rulership, right? Then King David would later defeat the rogue nation, annexing their land, all in the Bible. At the fall of the first temple under the Babylonians, the Edomites, so-called white men, attacked Judah and looted the temple, accelerating its destruction. Psalms 137 will tell you about this, right? Obadiah, the book of Obadiah will tell you about this as well. The Edomites were later, as we just read, the Edomites, these so-called Jews today, were later forcibly converted into what they call Judaism. By who? By John Hyrcanus. And then became an active part of the Jewish people. They should say Israelite people. That's why they think they're the Jews, because they became an active part of our nation. But they're not the Israelites. They are converts. And as I said, you can't actually convert to become an Israelite. It's a lineage thing. It's a kingship. You have to go back by lineage, by bloodline to the 12 tribes. But they believe they're the Jews because of this. This is the first time. It says famous Edomites include who? Herod. What was we just reading? Herod the Great, a Judicized, proselytized Idumean, ruled Judea tyrannically with the Roman backing. He died around 4 BC, around the time that Yahushua was born. He is said to have ordered the murder of the infants in Bethlehem, which is what we spoke about earlier, right? Herod Antipas, which was Herod the Great's son, was the second son of Herod the Great. He killed John the Baptist. So Herod Antipas was the one that killed John the Baptist. Whereas Herod the Great, his father, was the one that ordered the murder of the infant boys. Because remember, the prophecy was about this boy, this king that was going to be born and was going to become the king of the Jews. All right. Herod Antipas, which is Herod the Great's son, he killed John the Baptist. Herod Agrippa the first was a grandson of Herod the Great. That's Agrippa. All of these guys are in the Bible. He is mentioned in Acts, there you go, 12:1. Herod Agrippa II was the son of Agrippa I. He is also mentioned in the passages of Acts 25 and 13, Acts 26 and 32, when Apostle Paul was defending himself against the accusations of some fellow Jews. So this is who these devils go back to. We had Edomites that ruled over us in the kingdom, but because they married Israelite women, their children looked like us. So they was able to, in a sense, even pass for us because they looked like us. Herod Antipas, Herod the Great married Miriam, which was John Hyrcanus' the second sister, basically. But this is what they did. They married our women. Their children started to look like us, you know, mixed race children, mixed heritage, but they looked like Negroes. They probably came out looking strong Negro features. Maybe some of them were even really dark or whatever. But that's why they think they're us. But they are converts. They are Edomites. Now, this is called The 13th Tribe, all right? This is a book by Arthur Koestler, right? He wrote about these people, all right? You can get this book, right? He says here, Arthur Koestler was a so-called Jew, right? A Jewish scholar. That's him there. Have a quick look. 1 second, Slack and get something. Wow, so lucky family, sorry. So this man here wrote this book, Arthur Koestler, right? He's a so-called Jew from Budapest, right? As you can see here, right? So he says here, in which the author advances the thesis that the Ashkenazi Jews, because that's what they call themselves, right? They're a Jewish diaspora population who coalesce in the Holy Roman Empire around the end of the first millennium. Their traditional diaspora language is what? Yiddish. They're not Hebrews, they speak Yiddish, which is a mix of the Eastern European language. They call themselves Ashkenazis, but they don't go back to Japhet, right? Because Ashkenaz is Japhet's grandson. He's the son of Gomer. But they occupied the lands that Japhet and his children were given and controlled for a very long time. That's why they call themselves Ashkenazi. So he's telling you here, The 13th Tribe is a 1976 book by Arthur Koestler in which the author advances the thesis that the Ashkenazi Jews are not descended from the historical Israelites of antiquity. They don't descend from Jacob, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, basically. All right? They come from Abraham, Isaac, and Esau. Not from Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, because Jacob's name was changed to Israel, and that's why they're known as the Israelites. The word Israel means prince of power. So he wrote a book in 1976 telling you, he did all the research, so they don't descend from the historical Israelites of antiquity, but from where? From the Khazars. Who are the Khazars? They were a semi-nomadic Turkic people that in the late 6th century established a major commercial empire covering the southern eastern section of modern European Russia, southern Ukraine, Crimea, Kazakhstan. They created what is, for this duration, was the most. So this is where they come from. They also considered a Turkic people. Koestler hypothesized that the Khazars, who may have what? Converted. So this was the second major conversion of these so-called Jews. He says they converted to Judaism because Judaism is not biblical. Judaism is studying from the Babylonian Talmud. They have a book called the Babylonian Talmud or the Jerusalem Talmud. That's what Judaism is. Judaism isn't the Torah, the Tanakh, the New Testament, and the Apocrypha. It's not the Old, the New, and the Testament and the Apocrypha. Judaism is the studying of the Babylonian Talmud or the Jerusalem Talmud. That's what they study. They do use the first 5 books of the Bible, but they don't believe in the laws of Moses because they don't follow them. But they do use the first 5 books: Genesis, Exodus, Numbers, Leviticus, Deuteronomy, which is referred to as the Torah. But their main book of worship is the Babylonian or the Jerusalem Talmud. The word Judaism ain't in the Bible. But this was the second major conversion of these so-called Jews. They were Khazarians, which goes back to Esau, Edom, the Edomites. And they, just like it says here, who converted to Judaism in the 8th century. They migrated westward. Where did they go to? Into Eastern Europe in the 12th and 13th century when the Khazar Empire was collapsing. So they migrated westward into Eastern Europe. This is where they came. They first started off here in Russia, Estonia, Latvia, Belarus, Lithuania, Kazakhstan, around, that's the Caspian Sea over here. Ukraine, that's where they started off, right? Whoops. Let's put it over here. That's where they started off. Then they migrated westward into Eastern Europe. That's why they call themselves Ashkenazis. So they went from being calling themselves Edomites, then they were called themselves Khazars from the Khazarian Empire. Then they called themselves Ashkenazis. That's what they did. So then they ended up here. They came out from here, from the Caucasus Mountains, Ukraine, Russia, Kazakhstan. Some of them are in Turkey. These are the Turkic people, because the Turks are the same as them. The Turks are the same people as those so-called Jews. They're Edomites. The Turks are Edomites, just like the rest of those Europeans. So remember, all of these so-called white people, Europeans, and these Turks, they're all Edomites. It's just that the Ashkenazi, the so-called Jews, go back to Amalek, Esau's grandson. So they migrated westward. This is westward. Eastward is that way. Westward is this way to the left of the screen, into Eastern Europe. They were no longer calling themselves Khazars. They now became Ashkenazis because they were practicing Judaism. This is what these devils did. I want you to understand. That's why they think they are the Jews, because this migration took place around the 11th and 12th century AD. But the conversion to Judaism, these Khazars that became Ashkenazis, that conversion took place around 725 AD, about 300 years before they migrated here, before the Khazar Empire was no longer a power and a force here. So they migrated eastward and said, now we're going to call ourselves Ashkenazis. We're the Ashkenazi Jews. We're no longer the Khazarian Jews. We are the Ashkenazi Jews. That's where they got that name from. They took it from Gomer. Let me just quickly show you. Genesis 10. They don't go back. Remember, they call themselves Shem, right? They took it from Gomer's son. See it here? The sons of Japhet were Gomer, Magog, Mediah, Javan, Tubal, Meshesh, Tyrus, right? These are descendants of Noah, right? This is Japhet, right? One of Noah's sons. And the sons of Gomer is who? Ashkenaz. That's where they get the name Ashkenazi from, because they are in the lands that Gomer, Japhet and his sons and his grandsons occupied and was given to them after the flood. So now they became Ashkenazi Jews from that. So even this guy here, his name is Abraham Pollack. He's an Israeli historian, a professor at the Tel Aviv University. All right, this guy here is a professor since its inception. He's a professor of the medieval history and the founder of the Department of the Middle Eastern History, right, in Tel Aviv, in Israel today. His main areas of research were what? Were Jewish history, right? So look what this guy discovered. Where is it? I just want to quickly read it down here. There it goes. It says here, Pollack and the Khazars. So this is the professor writing about the Khazars. It says here, so I'll get to the point really. It says, to this date, Pollack is renowned mainly due to his book of the history of the Khazars. Although his vast research before and after the publication of this book was devoted to the areas of interest late in his life, Pollack was to refer to the issue of the Khazars only once again, when in 1969 he gave a speech on that topic at the World Congress Jewish Studies in Jerusalem. His book, Khazaria, History of the Jewish Kingdom in Europe, was groundbreaking, not only due to the comprehensive approach to the issue of the Khazars, but specifically because for the first time, Islamic sources were used. These sources were essentially unknown to researchers in the West and were uncovered by Pollack through his work, which was based on Arab, Persian, and Kurds authors. It says here, in his book, Pollack presented two important, albeit controversial assumptions. The first considered a non-Middle Eastern origin of the Eastern European Jews, right? The second saw the birth of the Yiddish, because that's what they speak, of the Yiddish language in Crimea and not Germany, because Yiddish is a West Germanic language historically spoken by Ashkenazi Jews. It originated in the 9th century in Central Europe, providing the nascent Ashkenazi community with a vernacular based on the High German fused with many elements taken from the Hebrew. That's what I said to you. I've told you about this before, right? So it says here, where was I going to get to? See here. It says here, this is the first attempt in any language to introduce the history of the Khazars kingdom. A methodological examination of the first-hand sources allowed the author to determine that the Khazars kingdom collapsed in 1239, and even to conclude that until its downfall, it was a powerful and independent state. It says here, even Salo Wittemer Baron and Ben Zion Dinner, two of the leading Jewish historians in those years, accepted Pollack's fundamental assumptions, right? Baron declared that from Khazarian Jews, you hear that, began to penetrate to the vast plains of Eastern Europe. Khazarian Jews came to Eastern Europe, went westward. This migration occurred both during the peak of the Khazars kingdom and during its decline. Professor Dina did not hesitate to confirm that the Khazarians was the origin of the diaspora, the origin of one of the greatest diasporas, the diaspora of Russia, Lithuania, and Poland, because that's where they come from, all right? It says here, nevertheless, these same assumptions which Pollack presented in his book were the target of criticism in various circles because of their possible ramifications on the right of the Jews to settle in Israel. As early as 1944, the Jewish historian Aaron Z. Escoli asserted, I do not know what enjoyment and dignity he finds in our Turkish Mongolian descent rather than our Jewish ancestry, because that's where they come from. Turkish, Mongolian, Edomites are the same people. It says here, trying to get to the part I want to read. I might have missed it. I think I might have missed it here. It says that the Bialik Institute has given us now the important book about Khazaria. It addresses the issue which everyone knows had a major influence on the formation of Polish and Eastern European Jewry, but not many took the trouble to assemble the few surviving sources to pursue them for many years until, behind the fog of myths and forgeries, the true character of the Khazars kingdom comes into light. Professor Polak made this thing happen and performed so diligently and thoroughly. The book itself, the bibliography attached to it, proved the extent of the undertaking of the author, who did not neglect any source and with a unique sense of history knew to find the criterion in which to distinguish between truth and a lie, between fiction and fact, between tradition and folklore. Because these Jews, as he shows you here, comes out of the Khazarian Empire, all right? There's another part in here. It says in 1941, Polak published an article, The Khazars, you hear that? The Khazars' Conversion to Judaism. That's the part I missed, all right? Up until then, the culture of the Khazars was outside of the scope of Polak's research. But evidently, this article led to delve deeper into his topic. And in 1943, he published his book, Khazaria, History of a Jewish Kingdom in Europe. In his book, Polak asserted that the Khazars were a demographic foundation of the Jews who inhabited Eastern Europe in the Middle Ages and who later evolved into what? The Ashkenazi Jewry. Just like I said, they went from being the Khazarian Jews to the Ashkenazi Jews, changed their names. For this book, Polak was awarded in 1943 the Bilar Prize for Jewish Thought by the city of Tel Aviv. The book was said to be of great historic value, which sheds new light on the obscure subject of the Khazars kingdom and is important to the history of the Jews and the country. So they went from being Khazars, because they converted to Judaism, to be calling Ashkenazi Jews. They evolved. This is what these devils did. They evolved, right? That's beautiful. Just like it says here, in his book, Polak asserted that the Khazars were the demographic foundation of the Jews who inhabited Eastern Europe in the late Middle Ages, who later evolved to the Ashkenazi Jewry. Hence why they call themselves Ashkenazis, right? Then you got this one, the invention of the Jewish people. Because that's what they are. They invented themselves. When and how was the Jewish people invented is a study of a historiography of the Jewish people by Shlomo Sand, professor of history at Tel Aviv. All of these are professors in Tel Aviv and Israel today that are telling you that these people that call themselves Jews, are not the biblical Jews. It says it has generated a heated controversy. That's what Kyrie's done. He's generated a heated controversy. The book was on the bestseller list in Israel for 19 weeks. So that's another professor. Man, I've gone far. Anyway, so I'm going to just bring out a couple of scriptures there because I know we've kind of gone quite far on that, but I just really wanted to show you what's information. But let me bring out a couple of scriptures before we shut this down, right? This is who they are. These are who the Edomites are. This is who they are. They evolved to Ashkenazi. This is what they did, these people, all right? What was I going to bring out? There's a couple of scriptures there. First Peter's chapter 2. It's a lot of information, I know. But you got to understand, our people need to know this is what the hoo-ha's about. So First Peter's chapter 2. First Peter chapter 2, verse 9. But ye are a chosen generation. That's the true children of Israel. You are a royal priesthood family, a holy nation, a peculiar people. What did the Lord say? That we are the salt of the earth, right? That ye should show forth the praises of him who has called you out of darkness into this marvelous light. That's what's happened. Because of the true prophets of the Lord, the Hebrew Israelite men that have been preaching this word on the highways and hedges for the last 30, 40 years. My elders, my apostles, my elders, Gabar, Tahar, Arimlab, Rakar, these guys have been pushing this for 30, 40 years to call out the elect, because only the elect are going to be called out of darkness. That darkness of who the real Jews are, who the true Israelites are. Only the elect are going to really see that light. But that light has been shined really bright now because of the Kyrie controversy. So, which in times past were not a people. In times past, you were not. You were what? You were niggers, coons, spicks, wetbacks, monkeys. In times past, you were called colored, black, African Americans, tontos. You were called, Latinos, Hispanics, Native American Indians. But now you know that you are the true children of Israel, which in times past were not a people, but are now the people of the Most High. Now the world is truly finding out that we are the people of the Most High. And so are our people finding out, which had not obtained mercy. That's why we got to come back, because we didn't obtain mercy because we were so far away from the Most High. Now we need to get back to Yahweh and the Son Yahweh Shai. We need to get back to the laws, commandments, and statutes. We need to get back to praying in the name of Yahweh Shai, the Son, who the world ignorantly calls Jesus Christ. Which had not obtained, but now have obtained the mercy because of what's... Listen, man, this is what this brings you. This brings you the true mercy. Ecclesiastes chapter 7. Hold on. It says, for wisdom is a defense and money is a defense, right? But the excellency of knowledge is that wisdom gives life to them that have it. So with this knowledge, you're going to get wisdom. You're going to get true wisdom. Consider the work of the Most High. For who can make that straight which he has made crooked? This man is crooked. These small hats are crooked. They can't be made straight. These Edomites are crooked. In the day of prosperity, be joyful, but in the day of adversity, consider. The Most High also has set the one over against the other, Jacob against Esau, to the end that man should find nothing after him. All things have I seen in the days of my vanity. There is a just man that perishes in his righteousness. And this is what he's kind of happening to Kyrie. He's a just man that is perishing in his righteousness of him, proclaiming that he is a Hebrew Israelite. He knows who he is. But they're trying to get the whole world to condemn him. And there is a wicked man, Esau, Edom, the small hats, that prolongs his life in his wickedness. That's what we see taking place now. The just man, you're seeing him perish in his righteousness. They're trying to, they want blood. They want his lungs, his heart, his liver. They want him lynched outside so everybody can see. Because he's declared he doesn't want to step back from what he's proclaimed. He knows who he is. But the wicked man, the Edomites, they prolong their life in wickedness. So they're still trying to keep hold of this. So First John's, hold on. First John chapter 3. That's what I want. Not First John. Scripture I'm thinking of, but it's not there. But anyway, let's finish on here. Romans chapter 8, because like I said, we've kind of gone along on this, but let's finish on here. Romans chapter 8, verse 14. For as many as are led by the Spirit of the Most High, they are the sons of the Most High. So the Spirit of the Most High right now is leading that Kyrie. I've heard rumors that he may retire. I don't know, but I've heard rumors that he's going to retire. And if he does, all praises to him. Throw in the towel, let them take it. You don't need nothing more from them. I don't know if it's true, but I've heard rumors. So let's hope he does truly follow his spirit and tell him, keep what you got. I'm out of here. For as many that are led by the Spirit, they are sons of the Most High. For ye have not received the spirit of bondage again to fear. Right? So that spirit of bondage that he had before, I spoke about him having the spirit of bondage. Maybe he's able to excavate it, to get rid of it now. Because we're not meant to have the spirit of the bondage of fear. We are the Israelites. We are the true children of Israel. But ye have received the spirit of adoption, the Lord's commandments and statutes, whereby we cry, Abba, Father. The Spirit itself bears witness with our spirit that we are the children of the Most High. You got to know in your spirit, with all the prophecies that speaks about our people, that we are truly the children of the Most High. The Spirit itself, that's why the Lord's going to wake up a lot of Israelites in these last days. It's going to bear witness with our spirit. That's the Holy Spirit. It's going to bear witness with our spirit that we are the children of the Most High. And that's what terrifies Esau. The Holy Spirit is bearing witness for us now. And if children, so if they are the children, they're going to say, then they're the heirs. That's what terrifies these small hats. Heirs of the Most High and joint heirs with Yahushua. If so be that we suffer with him, that we may be also glorified together. So if Kyrie's got to take some more suffering, don't worry, because the glory that we're going to get, family, is more than what we can imagine. Believe me when I tell you. We tell you this all the time. Immortality, spiritual powers is more than you can imagine when the Lord comes to set up the kingdom and take down these Edomites and these other nations. For I reckon that the suffering of this present time are not worthy to be compared with the glory which shall be revealed in us. I want to give all the praises and the glory to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahushai, Bahasham, Rakah, Kadash. I pray you are edified by today's edification. The jig is up. Amalek, the Israeli converts. The jig is up. As always, double honors to the apostles of Great Millstone, who have been leading this word in truth and in spirit and sincerity. And salutations to my fellow Hebrew Israelite brothers that are out there preaching the word, the true prophets of the Lord that are preaching on the highways and hedges and different streaming platforms. In the name of Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushai. Yahweh is the Most High's name. It means he is or he is to be. Yahushai is the Son's name, which means he's the deliverer. As I always say, family, keep praying, keep safe, and hold on to this truth. Just like what Apostle Paul says here. For I reckon that the suffering of this present time are not worthy to be compared with the glory which shall be revealed in us. We are the true children of Israel. They are not. Shalom, 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 family.